Tan boutas Jenny the early price na funny ogurgy colorty funny corbrew veltina aragages abrigis highly for the states. So hit yet and the anchovy is can shark head chile in the row good lectra has a ye hanglu, August is can tree head chile at a good gas, G hangly he. Kayin realtas cosk, G hanglu a horror to sta anish, August a hinchu gameon kosha vine the yichin at a gusage mother rave ikiakte. Minister, we need a real plan from government that ensures every single household are protected from disconnections this winter. The latest round of energy prices that have been announced by the providers, they're putting real pressure on families and workers right across the state. In the first half of this year, we see that over 700 households were disconnected from their electricity and over 300 households had their gas disconnected. And since then, as you know, bills have skyrocketed. More and more families are falling behind, and the possibility of these numbers increasing over the winter months is very real. Now, this week, Sinn Féin passed a Dáil motion here, calling on you to ensure that all households would be protected from gas and electricity disconnections during the winter months. At the core of our motion were two demands, Minister. First, a ban on disconnections now, instead of what you're planning, which is in December. And second, that this ban would apply to all households, including the hundreds of thousands of households who use prepaid meters, which your government have forgotten about, which your government have abandoned. And this is the urgent action that we need, Minister. As the weather turns, the fear of disconnection is very real and very present. 2 weeks ago, the Taoiseach gave a commitment. He said that nobody would be disconnected this winter, including households using prepaid meters. And these were welcome words. But they were only words, with no action to deliver on them. Instead of taking responsibility to protect households from disconnection, you tell them to go to their local social welfare officer. To make matters worse, your Green Party colleague, Minister Joe Bryan, went on TV on Sunday, and he told people not to look to government for help, but actually to go to St Vincent de Paul. Now, citing measures the government has taken, he said, and I quote, St Vincent de Paul and MABS are working with electricity providers to provide friendly credit. And his comments, Minister, again reveal yet again that this government is painfully out of touch. St Vincent de Paul do incredible work. Nobody can take away from that. Only for them, many people would go hungry in this state. But it beggars belief that a government minister would heap further pressure on them during such difficult times. It just isn't good enough for government to outsource its responsibility to charities, Minister. We need a real plan. We need a plan from government that ensures that every single household is protected from disconnections this winter. Some prepaid companies, as you know, already have bans on disconnections at weekends or on public holidays or during other peak times. So this ban should be extended to all households 24/7, providing that protection during the winter period. And you need to grasp this issue with urgency. We've been saying this to you now for weeks. We've been saying it to your government colleagues for weeks. But this is in your portfolio. This is your responsibility. All households need to be protected from energy disconnections this winter. So what must the government do? The government must introduce a disconnections ban now and ensure that those using prepaid meters are included. So, Minister, can I ask you some simple questions? Does this government have any intention whatsoever to give actions to the commitment that the Taoiseach gave that nobody would be disconnected this winter, including those on prepaid meters? Or was that just a false promise? And will you do the right thing? Will you give action to those words? Will you introduce a ban on disconnections for households immediately and run it to the end of March? And will you crucially ensure that the hundreds of thousands of people who use prepaid meters are included in this ban of disconnections?
Minister. Taoiseach was absolutely right that this government is committing to protecting and helping every single family, every household through this very difficult time in paying energy bills. And there's a whole variety of measures. If there were easy, simplistic solutions, they would be great, but that's not the real world. In this real world, what's actually working is the whole range of different measures which government are delivering on. Increases in social welfare protection, increases in energy payments to households. Rather than, as I understand last week, what Sinn Féin were arguing for was we should be giving greater loans to particularly those households using prepaid meters in difficulty. Listening and talking to the experts in the area say, no, that's not the right solution because it will put people back into further debt. We've been sitting down talking to the energy supply companies, talking to the Vincent de Paul and setting out policy in a coordinated, proper way. We will come out in the coming weeks of a further iteration of our energy action, combating energy poverty action plan, and that will build on what actually works. And that measure, you say it's charity, I disagree. What we're talking about here is community, and government, NGOs and others working together. It is not charity, but it's appropriate that we do use those tools that do work. That special needs payments, you argue against that, or you're saying, oh no, that shouldn't be an approach. I think in your budget provision you said we should have a 15 million hardship fund. We've spent so far this year 38 million. And the Minister for Social Protection is committed to make sure we have the staff and they have the resources so that any household in difficulty is able to avail of those funds, which are far better than the credit solutions you're proposing, which put families into further debt difficulties. We launched our Reduce Your Use, the next phase of the campaign yesterday. We did so in the offices of Alone, because their expertise and their ability to find and target and help those households, particularly maybe in older age groups, who mightn't find it easy to go through that social welfare system. So we're actually targeting, identifying and helping them. And I believe it's absolutely right and appropriate as well to use the mechanisms that are in place, that are working. So rather than cutting people off, that you can actually avail of the funds that are there and can be deployed with advice from MABS and the Vincent de Paul and others. Why would we get rid of and remove and stop a system that actually has the financial resources to help those households, is working, and we will continue to make sure it does work right through this winter period? So it's so easy to say kind of an easy, facile solution in what actually is a very complex situation where every household has different circumstances. And I believe the right approach in tackling poverty, in tackling energy poverty at this particular time, it is providing cash payments. That is the best way to help people through. And a whole range of other measures. The Commissioner for Regulation of Utilities has already significantly changed the rules in recognising the problem, that if people do get into debt difficulties, they have much easier repayment schedules, that they have to, anyone in such debt difficulty, particularly on prepaid meters, has to have access to the cheapest the cheapest payment rates. It's those practical measures that actually address the problem which will get us through this difficult period. And as I said, we will continue to look if there's any gaps, if there's any instances where people are not able to get resource to help in that, then we'll go back and change policy and amend to make sure we do. But that commitment from government is real. That commitment to help our households is real in the billions that have been put in the energy credit payments, which will start next week. That measure, or the 1st of November rather, that measure where people get cash. We've seen that how the first one worked. Those families in arrears went from about 200,000 homes down to 150,000 on that one payment. We've 3 further payments to deploy. That's real money, real help.
Minister, you said if there's any gaps. Let me point out the gap. 450,000 households that you've abandoned. You talk about energy credits and they're welcome, they'll be available to people. But there is also a ban on disconnections for hundreds of thousands of people who are on bill payment. Why? Because you recognise that this winter is going to be severe and there should be a ban. But for 450,000 people on prepaid meters, you've decided to abandon them. Now, you say the Taoiseach was right. The Taoiseach didn't say we'll do all that we can. The Taoiseach says nobody will be disconnected this winter. They are happening. You talk about the real world. It is happening. People are self-disconnecting. This is what is really happening. So why can't we have a bit of fairness? One house beside the next, the same with the same problems in terms of financial, the same 2 households getting the same energy credit, but one has the protection that they will not be disconnected this winter and the other doesn't. That is 450,000 households across the state. Vulnerable people looking into this winter and seeing a government who has abandoned them and needs to do the right thing. So do the right thing, give action to the commitment that was given by the Taoiseach, introduce a ban on disconnections now, not in December, and introduce it for all households, giving them certainty that the heat will stay on, that the lights will stay on over this winter period.
A whole range of different circumstances. A lot of people go on to prepay because it actually works for them. It helps them in budgeting. It actually gives them the ability to reduce their bills and reduce their use by about 8%. That's the experience of what's actually happening. And there are complications to this because you have both gas and electricity. And yes, we will continue to look at what are the rules and regulations that would help them through a particularly difficult period. A lot of people disconnect if you're moving home or if you're entering a tenancy. There's a whole range of circumstances within which people are in. But in my mind, the crucial thing is people have the money so they don't have to disconnect. And that ability, be it through the funds that the likes of MABS and Vince DePaul and others can help. There is nothing wrong with that as a mechanism to help people out. Furthermore, you going to that 38 million euros in additional needs payments, which is a system that works, that actually is fair, that is targeted and correct. And it's the targeting of where we need the money most, and provision for that is the right approach, in my mind, to help people through this particular period.
Thank you. Can we listen with respect? Thank you.
You have a guarantee that your electricity won't be disconnected. 450,000 people have been
Can we do this? If we Thank you. Minister, if we proceed like this, the proceedings will be abandoned. Okay, we have visitors in the gallery. Tá daltaí Susan Styre Branuar, Moshe the hell we're talking.